There are a few events in my life that I can say brought me complete joy. Um, can't miss my wedding. That was a pretty joyful day, in spite of the stress and um, being upset at some family during that day. Anybody else have weddings like that? Don't answer that if you have family here, or some that may be watching online. Um, the birth of my children, that was pretty joyful. I mean, that was something. The first time that first baby was placed in my arms was pretty joyful. And I remember being kind of afraid when the second one came. It was like, how will I love the second one as much as the first one? And then I saw her, and it was just that same joy that came again when it was just as full and was just as complete. I think we all have those things that bring us joy that go beyond happiness, right? Joy that is bone deep, that goes down to your toes. This joy that just kind of wells up from within us. One of my most joyful days of the year is Christmas Day. I'm usually the first one up, just because I'm the oldest, and it's just the way my body works, and I just wake up before anybody else. And I love just the quietness of the house. I love the colors in the house, and just to sit there, and I always do devotions in the morning, and so I sit there with my Bible and just have this serenity almost in the house. It just brings me joy. It's not just happiness, it's joy. There's a peace to it. There's a hope to it. And as I'm sitting there on Christmas morning and I hear the house start to rustle as the morning kind of progresses, and I can hear people start to move around. 'Cause in our home, this is our tradition. So some of you may be wondering, like, peace? What's peace on Christmas morning? It's usually the kids dragging me out of bed. But in our house, in our tradition, we always let the kids sleep in. We let the kids sleep in just about as long as they wanted to. Becky, we just sleep in as long as we want. And we get up and we usually cook a big breakfast. And we eat breakfast. And it's kind of just as you wake up, you eat this breakfast. I usually start it because I'm the first one up. And so the aromas of breakfast start to fill the house. And then we all eat and we maybe watch a movie in the morning. And then we'll clean up from breakfast and maybe get ready a little bit. Then we'll open gifts. So we don't open gifts till like 11 o'clock in the morning. I know, right? It's weird, eh? I mean, some of you are like ready for a nap by 11 o'clock in the morning, and your house is a disaster. We're just getting started. But then we'll clean up from breakfast. We'll open gifts around 11 o'clock, and that'll take us a couple hours because, each person, it's not just chaos. It's this person opens it, then this person opens it, and this. Then. So we do that for all of the gifts. It just takes a couple hours, and we just sit and we just have a great time. So then we clean up from that, and then we have lunch around, 1, 2 o'clock, something like that. We're never in a hurry. And then we'll watch a movie, and we'll just kind of play games and kind of hang out for the afternoon. And Becky makes the best cheesecake in the world. I mean, it is restaurant quality. We'll sell it to you if you want to pay for it. But it's just amazing. We'll have cheesecake and pistachios. I don't know what it is about pistachios, but pistachios in our home became a thing. And we can't have the shelled ones. You got to buy them where you shell them. And this is our day, and we watch movies, and we just kind of lay around all day, and it's a fantastic day. When Rachel was, I think it was coming up on her second Christmas, we told her family, we love you, don't come over. On Christmas Day, it's our day. On Christmas Day, we're not coming to your house. If you show up at our doorstep, this was families, this is not you. If family showed up at our doorstep, I said we might let you in, but you're not staying. Christmas is our day. This is and some of you are like, this is just weird. But this is and it just brings me such joy. It's not just happiness. There's joy to this day that I can't describe. But this is our day. I mean, some of you, we all have those, right? You all have those things that just bring you joy, that just kind of put a smile on your face. There's just a deep sense of peace to it. There's just a deep sense of contentment to it. It's not happiness, it's joy. And there's a huge difference between joy and happiness. Yes, there are some things that overlap. There are some emotions and feelings that overlap. But joy is different than happiness. Happiness is snickerdoodles. That I saw a face. I saw that face. I mean, you're wrong. Snickerdoodles are the best cookie. I mean, snickerdoodles are amazing. That makes me happy. Cheesecake makes me happy. A waffle cone with ice cream in it makes me happy. It doesn't bring joy, but it brings me happiness. There is this significant difference between joy and happiness. And we have this announcement in the Bible when it comes to the birth of Jesus. And we're going to read the Christmas story this morning as found in the Gospel of Luke chapter 2. We're going to read the first 20 verses, this announcement that Jesus brings to us and announces to the shepherds. So chapter 2, verse 1, at that time the Roman Emperor Augustus decreed that a census should be taken throughout the Roman Empire. This was the first census taken when Quirinius was governor of Syria. All returned to their ancestral towns to register for the census. And because Joseph was a descendant of King David, he had to go to Bethlehem in Judea, David's ancient home. He traveled there from the village of Nazareth in Galilee. He took with him Mary, his fiancée, who was now obviously pregnant. And while they were there, the time came for her baby to be born. She gave birth to her firstborn child, a son. She wrapped him snugly in strips of cloth and laid him in the manger because there was no lodging available for them. That night, there were shepherds staying in the fields nearby, guarding their flocks of sheep. Suddenly, an angel of the Lord appeared among them, and the radiance of the Lord's glory surrounded them. They were terrified, but the angel reassured them. Don't be afraid, he said. I bring you good news that will bring what? Great joy to all the people. The Savior, yes, the Messiah, the Lord has been born today in Bethlehem, the city of David, and you will recognize him by this sign. You will find a baby wrapped snugly in strips of cloth lying in a manger. Suddenly the angel was joined by a vast host of others, the armies of heaven, praising God and saying, Glory to God in the highest, and peace on earth to those with whom God is pleased. When the angels had returned to heaven, the shepherds said to each other, Let's go to Bethlehem. Let's see this thing that has happened, which the Lord has told us about. They hurried to the village and found Mary and Joseph, and there was the baby lying in the manger. After seeing him, the shepherds told everyone what had happened and what the angels had said to them about this child. All who heard the shepherd's story were astonished, but Mary kept all these things in her heart and thought about them often. The shepherds went back to their flocks, glorifying and praising God for all they had heard and seen. It was just as the angel had told them. There is this joy that is announced. It will be a message that will bring great joy to all people. Not just happiness, but joy. There's something else that it says in here. There are several times that it says in here, don't be afraid. There are several times in the birth story, in the nativity story, that it says, don't be afraid. Zechariah, the shepherds, Mary, Joseph, this announcement always says, don't be afraid. Don't be afraid. I think fear robs us of joy. Fear and joy cannot occupy the same space. Fear and joy cannot coexist. We cannot have fear and joy. We can't be excited and have this peace, but yet be afraid. One will drive out the other. So the angels show up in the announcement to Mary. The angel shows up to Joseph when he is considering the divorce. The angel shows up to Zechariah. The angel shows up to shepherds and all says, don't be afraid. I know you might be freaking out right now, but don't be afraid because there is joy. There is something that will drive that fear out. And it's not just happiness. It's joy. The definition of joy that Jesus uses is this, that is generally used in the New Testament, is a deep sense of contentment. Happiness can be a fleeting thing, but joy is this deep sense of contentment, this calm delight. I love that definition of joy, a calm delight. It's that Christmas morning of sitting in my chair, having the Bible on my lap, reading the story, and there is just this calm delight. After the kids were born, I'm not sure about Becky, I had this calm delight of what was happening, that sense that everything is just right in the world. even though we know it's not, there is this calm delight. There is this sense that everything is going to be okay. And we can have peace that we've talked about. We can have hope that we've talked about because we have this joy in our life that maybe we can't even explain. It exceeds a happiness. Jesus announces this calm delight, this deep sense of joy that's going to exist for all people. Now, as humans, I think that we tend to pursue happiness over joy, don't we? To our detriment. In the Constitution, what's the Constitution say? Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Well, what do we tend to associate happiness with? We tend to associate happiness with a good job, with stuff. It tends to center around things that might bring us happiness. Getting a new vehicle makes me happy until I see the bill. And then that happiness gets sucked right out of my life. There's no joy in that, but that it makes me happy. Getting a Christmas gift, it brings us happiness. But what happens is oftentimes that happiness flees, right? It vaporizes, it goes away because things tarnish, things break. Happiness isn't found in stuff, but that's how we tend to associate things. It's how we tend to associate satisfaction in our life is with stuff. And it's guaranteed, the pursuit of it anyway, is guaranteed in the Constitution, the pursuit of happiness. But we look at that and we think of life and we think of happiness and we think of the world that we live in. It's like, man, it's not a very happy place. There's lots of sorrow and sadness and death and destruction and hate in the world. It's not very happy. But the Bible says, I will bring you news of great joy. It will be for all the people. It's not happiness, it's joy. Interesting thing about Jesus. What does Isaiah say about Jesus? He was a man of sorrow, familiar with suffering and pain. But what does the New Testament say about him too? He was filled with joy. So how does this jive together? We have a man who is familiar with sorrow and pain. We could say, I can identify with that, but yet filled with joy. This describes who Jesus was. How does that jive? Well, Jesus had this deep, calm contentment, excitement about what was going to happen and who God was. This is the story of the gospel. This is the story that we celebrate on Christmas time of joy, not happiness, but of joy. Fear robs us, joy gives us. In spite of everything that's going on around us, we have joy. We have contentment. We can have calmness. We can have peace. We can have hope. Like peace and hope, it is within us. Well, hope is about something else that we're looking forward to something, and we're hoping that something is going to happen someday, and we can grasp that, and we're holding on to that future hope. Peace comes from within us. Remember last week we talked about the Irene peace and the shalom peace that exists, that God gives us, that is within us, not dependent on anything, the chaos that is going on around us, that God inserts himself into the chaos and brings peace. This joy is given to us. You have joy. Now the question is, are you exercising it, and are you using it, and are you claiming it? Because it's been given, it's not dependent on anything else. Happiness is typically dependent on something else. Happiness is depending on, the smell of ham cooking on Christmas morning. That makes me happy. Cookies make me happy. Ice cream makes me happy for a little bit, but then I'm lactose sensitive, so then it doesn't make me very happy. But while I'm eating it, I'm very happy. There's this joy that the Scripture says he gives us. It's not outside of us. It's not dependent on anything else other than him, on his person. the way that the Bible talks about joy, it uses it as a noun. It uses as a noun that is something that we are, something that we possess. Happiness is an adjective. Happiness describes something. But what the Bible tells us is we have joy. It's a noun. It's who we become. It's what we possess. It's who we are. Church, we're supposed to be joy. Are we? Are you? Now, that doesn't mean if we're joyful, that doesn't mean we're just bebopping around and we're just excited all the time. We have a smile painted on our face and all that kind of stuff. That's not what it means. I mean, over the last couple of weeks, I have not been exuding a whole lot of joy. But there is still within my soul this deep sense of, God's got this. And I can trust and I can hope in that. You know, it's interesting. As I was studying this, I never really thought about it before, never really considered it until I started reading some stuff from Psychology Today or something. It was one of those psychology journals that described that the physical response to fear and joy are very similar. The physical response that we have. What happens when you get scared? You tense up, right? I love, it's kind of a twisted part of my personality. I love scaring people. I've taken, there's joy that I get from and happiness that I get from scaring people. You can ask Chris. I enjoy some of that around the office. But anyway, there's a similar physical response between fear and joy. What happens when we get scared? We tense up. What happens when you see grandkids? I can't wait. You know, there's that excitement of Christmas when kids are running down the stairs. There's the tenseness, there's the excitement, right? There's a similar physical response between joy and fear. The announcement of don't be afraid. There's joy. There is, in this article that I was reading in Psychology Today, I think it was, it says we have a choice that when we tense up like that, when we are afraid, in that moment, we can capture, in our mind, we can capture the physical response to the fear, and we can choose to have an attitude and a spirit of joy. In our mind, we have this ability somehow, the way God has created us, that somehow in our mind, when we are afraid and when we tense up and when we are scared, we can channel and funnel that physical response into an attitude and a spirit of joy. And we can take it and we can use it and allow God to work in our lives so that now instead of fear, where the chemicals are released into our body, into our brain, of the fight or flight response and the emotion of fear and the physical response of fear, you know, the stress that happens, the heart attacks that can happen, those kind of things, blood pressure rise, that kind of stuff, that we can choose in our mind to channel that and funnel that fear, that physical response into joy. It takes discipline of the mind to be able to do that. But that fear that we have when a doctor says something to us, that fear that we have when our children go out and our children aren't home, and we wonder, you know, like all parents think their child is dead in a ditch somewhere, don't they? Like if they're not home when they're supposed to be, it's like we have this tension that builds up with us. Like, are our kids okay? You know, it doesn't matter. I didn't understand it when I was in college. Like, Mom, you're just overreacting. If I was at college or if I was going to be gone for the night, my mom could sleep like a baby. She wouldn't worry about me. But if I was supposed to be home that night and if I was supposed to sleep at home that night, even if I was coming home from college just for the weekend, if I wasn't home, she couldn't sleep. Because of the worry that she had about, was I okay? We have this ability somehow that God has created in us. Don't fear, there's joy. Don't respond negatively to messages. Don't respond negatively to bad news. I understand, I'm speaking of generalities. I know we have reactions, right? But this message that God brings to the disciples, to the shepherds, says, don't fear. And he says repeatedly, over and over and over again, don't be afraid. Why does he say it so often? Because it's our natural response to fear. It's a human response. But this message, don't be afraid, don't be afraid, don't be afraid. There's this quote I love. Have any of you ever heard of Viktor Frankl? He's a famous guy, came out of World War II. I mean, he's an author, a psychologist. I forget his profession. But he was a Jew. He was in a Nazi concentration camp. And I believe he was in Auschwitz. I'm not sure which camp he was in. I think it was Auschwitz. But he was tortured by the Nazis. He was tortured, experimented on, a horrible existence, as we all know what a concentration camp was like. And one of the guards asked him, why are you still so positive? Why are you positive? Why is your mindset positive? And look what he said. Look at his response. This is what Viktor Frankl says to a Nazi concentration camp guard. The one thing you can't take away from me is the way I choose to respond to what you do to me. The last of one's freedoms is to choose one's attitude in any given circumstance. We have the power and the ability to choose joy. I mean, can we think of a worse situation that we could find ourselves in other than a Nazi concentration camp? And here is this person says, you cannot remove from me, no matter what you do to me physically, you cannot remove my ability to choose how I respond to you. And Viktor Frankl chose joy. He chose to respond and to believe that God was still in control. How are you choosing to respond to life this morning? What are you choosing to give your energy and your focus to? To the fear? Or to the one who is above and beyond and in control and sovereign over all, and choose joy in the fact that God is still reigning and God is still sovereign? We sang that song, He who reigns forevermore, forevermore. Do you believe that this morning? Do you trust in that this morning? Will you choose to put your joy in Him? Peace and hope that we've lit those candles. Are you giving up joy because you're focusing on the fear? Are you giving up joy because you're focusing on the stress? It seems a little oversimplistic to just say choose joy. But I look at this story of God saying, don't be afraid. I'm bringing a good message. You may not understand it yet, but it's great. It's joyful. It's a good thing. To hear people talking about Oxford and saying, I wonder what God's going to do. How is God going to use this to bring good out of it? To bring good out of whatever you're going through in your life that God can bring, and we can choose joy. It doesn't matter what happens in life around us. We can choose joy. But I look at this story. You may think it's oversimplistic. I look at what just simple what psychologists tell us how we can choose to respond in a crisis. We have the ability to choose joy. We have this ability to channel and to funnel our energies and our physical response into joy. Is it easy? I'm not going to tell you that. I'm not going to guarantee that it's easy. But it is a choice. And will you choose joy? Will you choose life? Will you choose to look to Him? Will you choose to see His provision, His protection? Will you choose to see that this season? And regardless of what you hear on the media, what you read in the news, choose joy, because it is something that He has given to you and promised to you that is within you and me. Will you choose joy this morning. Why don't you guys come, and we're going to close with this song. And I want to encourage you in this moment. Maybe Satan's whispering in your ear and doubting this and saying this is all just a little bit ridiculous. I want you to hear the message of the angels this morning. Do not be afraid. I have a message for you of great joy.